Hi, my name is Sam.
Hi, I'm Belize, and today we're watching Malcolm and Marie.
Are we just not going to address it?
And what's there to say? I think it's pretty normal.
It's pretty obvious.
Right.
It's pretty
Hey,
obvious
guys.
that this is not like really good green screen.
That'd be pretty cool too, though. But yes, this is our bigger budget episode, I guess.
Honestly, but like, yeah, like there's money thrown into this.
Yeah, it
Like,
definitely was. But this is a temporary step one. We will be going back to our regular setup.
like America. COVID.
Anyway. You chose this one.
What are your thoughts?
I mean, it was a blind pick for both of us because it had just come out. I really liked it. I'm really excited.
I really like Brussels sprouts. They are really good for me
Well,
and make me feel strong.
Oh, okay. What? I'm trying to be genuine.
That's the problem. You're trying. So we're talking about Malcolm Murray. Belize, what were your thoughts?
I actually really liked it. I think it was really enjoyable, and I have a few notes as to like the different aspects as to why and everything.
We'll start it off.
Oh, should I just even want to
Yeah.
say what you thought either? Because it was also blind for you.
Oh, I really loved this movie. It's my favorite type of genre. Like two people just in a space having conversation. It feels more like a play than it does an actual cinematic experience. But it's beautiful because the camera is what makes it cinema.
You took some of my notes.
Oh. You don't have ownership of these notes.
Yeah,
Well, can we just start with
enough
that?
topics. Yes.
Let's just start with that topic. So,
Okay.
how did you phrase it in your notes?
Well, the whole concept of it being shot and written like a play, I think is really important because it's just even with like the busy work that she does when they're talking and she's like fixing stuff in the bedroom and everything like that. But there's just straight up monologues and it just all takes place at night. There's a lot of plays that's very common for that to be done, and it's just all about the dialogue and the performance of it. It's not really flashy locations or anything like that. It's a play. And there's a lot of plays that do that. And I love those. Like I've seen the plays, I've read and acted in those plays, but I haven't watched these in the film format as often. And I really like that I got to see that because I don't know how many audiences are used to those style of art in general, because those plays aren't, I feel like, done as often nowadays either.
Especially not in movies. But I will say, I think that's why I was so like defensive about Much Ado About Nothing's use of like the one house, because I'm so used to this type of stuff. I search for these types of films where it's like, it's not necessarily like the hero's journey, like what does this person want? It's more like about a dissection of like their relationship together. But I do feel like Marie has a clear want. Like Marie wants him to say I'm sorry, and Malcolm wants Marie to let it go. But what I thought was so brilliant, one day I'm going to show you the Before trilogy, and you're going to see like 3 films that like their whole premise is this one night, this one day, this one evening, where we just like talk and have a beautiful relationship and people grow together or grow apart. Malcolm and Marie is phenomenal because it reminds me of those plays like Closer or like, you know, Marriage Story, where it's just these 2 people arguing and battling it out. The one thing I had a qualm with in terms of that, and again, I've seen a lot of these different films, so I just noticed, I was like, these are all just monologues. I would have loved for them to have been like talking over each other at one point or like interjecting, because I feel like that's a more honest portrayal of like that kind of a heated fighting. Because like, how can someone like Malcolm sit back and listen to Marie like really ream at him when his personality seems like someone who like doesn't want to listen. So like he would listen, he would take it in, they would separate like the act break of this moment, and then he would come back in and like give her this huge monologue. And so that was the only thing I wish that they included, was just some like bickering back and forth. I thought that would be like more like texture to a scene, if that makes any sense. Because it got a little monotonous for me.
Oh, interesting. Okay, cool. I see what you mean. I didn't notice it missing, but I get why it would have added a bit more. But I like the way it was done with. It didn't feel monotonous to me. I wanted to talk about the opening monologue that Malcolm gives, and yeah, I just wanted to bring up that because I know that you also. I feel like this did that resonate with you? Because I feel like it just does if you're to film and into the side of filmmaking. So
That swipe across the house of just seeing Malcolm express his joy and then get stuck in the ego of directing, because like it was just so cool. He's a hipster and he's not a hipster. He's a man with a message, but he doesn't want to have a message. He wants to have great reviews, but he doesn't want to become contrite. And I thought that was so brilliant. And I love the fact that every time it was swiping over to Marie, she just was so out of it. And I personally, that was the only part of this entire movie that like I kind of resonated with Malcolm. I kind of felt like, oh fuck, oh my goodness, like I would have done that. Like I know I've probably done that before, where like you're so caught up on the high of what you've just done that you forget the people around you. And then I have a comment to that, but I want to hear. But it's a transgression. It's a transfer to a different topic. So, what is your thought on the opening monologue?
No, same. I rewatched the opening monologue like before I continued. I really liked it, and I thought it was interesting to just hear the way he was saying it all too, but mainly the content of it. And I just love. That's the thing about like that, those kinds of things. These kinds of movies is kind of art form. I just love that all we had to see from her, she said a few things, but was the cigarette. And you just got it from there that she, like how she felt about him in those moments and everything like that she was upset about something. So I loved it. I thought it was really cool. And that's why I like made a note specifically because I think that's my favorite part, like piece of dialogue.
Well, we talked about it and we talked about that like body language and how much that screams in Love and Basketball, where like Q was whispering to that girl at a party and we don't even know what he's saying. We know what he's doing. It's body language. Like her with a cigarette is such a contrast to him, like larger than life. And I kind of want to make a comment. She had a reason to be upset. I think it was rude of her to have done it that night. It was the greatest night of his entire career. You couldn't have just let him sleep and just like bask in that glory of like the greatest night of his career and have this fight in the morning.
This coming, did you not, we didn't discuss this. We made a point not to discuss our thoughts on the movie, but did you not post an Instagram story? I thought, from what I gathered on that you were like very much taking Marie's side. So I was very surprised now that this is what I didn't expect this.
I am taking her side. She's right. She's 100% right. But since we're talking about the opening of the film,
Gotcha.
I immediately that's what I'm talking about. Like from the opening, because the cool thing about this movie is that you hear bits and that's what's cool about these types of movies in general, is that you don't get the moment before, you don't get the moment after. What they're saying gives you and feeds information to you of like what's going on. And that's kind of like the fun mystery of like, wait, what's happening? And like, so I'm 100% on her side. But then I thought to myself, I was like, but if it was my night and I had just landed this big pinnacle moment of my life, like let's say we gender bent Malcolm and Marie. Let's say like Marie was the director and Malcolm was the guy, the cigarette. I wonder if we would immediately be like, yes, you're right, because they would still be right regardless of their gender. But it's like, dude, it's like the biggest moment of their entire career. Why couldn't you just let them have like this one big moment of their career and talk about it in the morning?
Can I play devil's advocate? Because
absolutely, yes. Because I'm on her side.
Right.
So yeah.
And I completely agree with you that like doesn't matter who's what, like yes, either obviously we're going to feel more sympathy for Marie, that because we're women, but we're trying our best to gender bend it. I completely agree with you, but the way I read it, she did not want to talk about it. He kind of kept pushing her in to finally saying it. Because they came in, she was trying like, she's trying to relax, trying to smoke a cigarette, move on, and he's like going on. She'd say like one or two commentary things, but didn't make it about her yet. Was just pointing out the things that he was saying that was hypocritical. And then she made him mac and cheese and she's cooking for him. And then that's when he's slowly starting to pick up on the fact that she's upset with him about something. And then he's the one that's like, just tell me what it is, and kind of pushes her. And she was, not that I'm saying she's willing to let it go, she wasn't. but she was trying to just get through the night, and I think that was her trying her quote unquote best to just get him fed, make him mac and cheese, like go to bed. She like didn't want to talk about that night. She was trying not to make that night about her, but obviously she couldn't control the fact that she was giving off a coldness and an anger with it, and then so he kept pushing it and was like, "Just tell me what it is."
Yeah, I'll go with you on that. Absolutely, absolutely. Even though it's clearly hurt her, and she has every reason to get hurt, which is why I think this film is brilliantly executed in that regard. Because we start with Malcolm. We start with Malcolm. We start with his like big speech of how amazing his life is today, and she's absolutely. We don't know anything about Marie. We don't know anything about Marie in the beginning of this film, and then as the film progresses, I don't know how you could end the movie and defend Malcolm. You know, you can't end it and be on his side, especially with the way he's acting. Because the way I took it when she's baking the macaroni and cheese, I think she wanted to talk about it, but what she wanted wasn't for him to be like, okay, come on, get it out. Like, what's going on? Like, let's move on. Like, enjoy my night. She wanted him to like get his head out of his ass and be like, hey, I realized that tonight I hurt you because of this thing that I did. I think that's what like when she was seeing him dance and have this amazing evening, it's like, you know what, you really didn't know that I existed tonight. You know? So it's not that I don't think that she wanted to talk about it. I think she wanted to talk about it, but I think what she wanted from this partner she's been with for the past like 5 years was for him to like notice, like you know how I told you the other day, like I can tell from your posture, like it wasn't a good conversation or something like that, or like, oh, what's up? Like let's get it out. Let's have like an open discussion about this. I think that's what she wanted, and it's the one thing he did want to give her because it's the one thing that he was like, I know I'm supposed to ask like what's wrong, but come on, babe, does it have to be wrong today? Like, can you just smile and be fake for me? Like, can you just be fake? Because he's fake with everyone except for her, and she's sick of it. So like it was just toxic from the start. And so from the beginning of the film, my immediate reaction when I watched the beginning of the film was I was on his side. I was like, oh, come on, what does that be tonight? And then the film started progressing. And I was like, oh, I understand why this woman cannot sleep at the same bed with you tonight. You know what I'm trying to say?
That's interesting. From the beginning, I was on her side. I never stopped being on her side, but there were points where I was like, oh, I'm on his side for a second. I'm on his side for a second. I'm on his side again, and then I'm on your side again. And now I just don't like either of you.
It's because I like immediately like saw myself in him, and I was like, oh, I know I would have been that toxic person that was like, ba, 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 ba. Oh, you're upset. Can you just give me like 5 seconds? Like, you know what I mean? Like, and then we'll talk. Oh, you know what I mean? But then the rest of the film, I was like, oh no, he's horrible. He's horrible. Get the hell out. Get the hell out. No.
Yeah. You like, are there specific moments
yes
that you'd like to discuss? Perfect.
Yes. Okay. They're both bad people. You just said that perfectly. They're both toxic people. They should not be together because he was right in what he said to Marie on the terms of like, why aren't you doing what you want to do? Why aren't you pursuing acting? Like, why are you still, after 5 years, what happened? And then, but she's right, all the trauma she just went through. But so it's like, that was a big slap in the face of like, oh, okay, that's true. There's clearly a fear aspect of like what she's going on. And that's why she's upset and resentful of like, I'm dating you. I'm dating you as a director. Why didn't you cast me in this movie? Why didn't you put me in this movie? The reason why I take her side 100% of the time, she never was cruel in what she was saying. And then the bathtub scene, I want to talk about the bathtub scene specifically. I don't know if that hit you like it hit me. He just sits there and talks about every single woman he's ever been with that inspires his work to this day. And what's specifically horrible about that just that alone sounds disgusting. What's specifically horrible is that she had just previously said like, oh, my walk, my this, my way I talk, my story, everything, that's what you took. And he was like, oh, this is what you think is yours? No, it's a stripper I met. Or you think this is what's yours? No, it was this other person. None of it's you. Because he just so vehemently didn't want to give her the credit of being his muse like she is. And so he tore her down bit by bit by bit by bit and then said, I love you. I hated him.
Yeah, yeah, he was very, and that's why I think that their style isn't bickering. I think it is the whole this what they do. They listen to respond. So they're as that, like, you know what I mean. Everything she said, he didn't say anything. That's why I don't think it's in his nature to yell back. He took it in, and he takes the criticism she gives him just the same way that he gives her. But she just doesn't give those kinds of criticisms. She just gives different kinds. He made little notes of his response, took a second to think about it, comes back, and it's like, this is why you were wrong. This is my answer to you. So they're both really well thought, thinking, not well thought out because they didn't have like months, but you know what I mean? Like, it's not, you can't really say for the most part that anything was said in the heat of the moment. So none of this can be blamed on, oh, I was just in the heat of the moment, it slipped out. No, everything that was said was strategically used against the other person to hurt them.
My favorite part is when he uses the nails, the nail clipper, like killing herself with the nail clipper thing, because he used it in his movie and he didn't give her even that bit of credit. And then she says back to him, and I love this so much. Like, oh, like when you try to commit suicide with a nail clipper, but I would never bring it up. But you would feel embarrassed afterwards, and I would never bring it up in an argument. And it was just so true. And then she says, and it makes me regret being so open with you, because it's so true. How many people in our lives have we met where it's like, let's say I tell you that like chocolate is like a trigger word for me, like you can't talk about chocolate, and then like we get into a fight, and the first thing that comes out of your mouth is chocolate, 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 and then you want to say, oh, I'm so sorry. It's like, I would never do that to you. That's really wrong. And all throughout the arguments, she keeps saying, only if you stop saying things that are cruel. Please don't be cruel, Malcolm. Please don't say things that are cruel, because his whole thing, okay, her whole side, what does she want? She wants an apology, and she sticks to that. She's like, these are all the reasons why what you did hurt me, and you're not giving me ownership of my own story, but you took it and you're having the greatest moment of your career. You're so authentic because of me. His whole thing is like, I did all this on my own. I did all this on my own. I have no idea what you're talking about. You're such an idiot. Like, I have no idea what you're talking about. You're nothing. I did all this on my own. But the reason why that's an empty story is his side of the argument is just so empty, and that's why he yells so much, and that's why he's so aggressive and violent with his words, is because he knows it's an empty argument.
Yeah. And can we just talk about also, yes, he doesn't even acknowledge that she worked on it, but think to all the award shows you see where people give acceptance speeches. I feel like it's pretty normal, even if the person you're with for 5 years had nothing to do with the content of the work, that you would at least thank them for being your support through everything. I feel like I see that's what I mean. Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively are like, you know, special couple. They're amazing. They're perfect. But like, I feel like I always see those kinds of tweets and like those kinds of posts where they're thanking each other just for being their support system, their rock through a project. And like, he didn't even give her that. So he could have thanked her in a way where it wasn't directly related to the art, if that was, you know what I mean, something that like he truly believed she had nothing to do with. He didn't thank her at all.
That's why her monologue of like what different types of thank yous was so beautiful. It was like, thank you for pulling me through all this. Thank you for being my rock. Thank you for being there long nights. Thank you for reading hundreds of drafts. Like, you are a bad person.
Yeah.
Like, the minimum people, and like, he thanked, like, what was the comment? It's like, you thanked your entire damn crew down to the gaffer, and like, what about me? You know?
Right, exactly. And then going to the bathtub scene, he was so strategic, and like you said, with the "I love you" at the end, because he lists every single thing that is not her, and lists all these other women that he's been with. Which also, it's kind of a red flag that other women he's been with have also had like
Problems.
drug issues and different problems. It's like that's nothing wrong unless you say back to back like that. And I'm like, then I feel like you're purposely picking people that need a dependency on you.
Well, that's what she says to him. She specifically says to him, like, that's why you're so authentic, is because you get to see the chaos from like so up close, but you don't do experience it yourself. You want to be the savior, but then you walk away.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But he really does a good job of like saying all that and then turning it around and being like, but these are the things I love about you. And I'm like, this is such gaslighting to a T. This is how it's done. This is where you make someone super self-conscious about everything about themselves, and then you give them a little bit back of esteem of what you see in them, and almost make it sound like no one else in the world sees them like that but you.
That's the whole point. He's pointing out all the things about her that are awful, but I love you.
Yeah.
I see through all that. No, you don't. You remind her every day of all that. And what's crazy, you think about it, she keeps saying over and over again that she was 20 when they met. So she's 25. It's not a crazy age difference, but it is. So, like, he met a girl at 20 who was going through horrible issues. She just wants respect. And it's like, well, isn't it the quote? I told you this quote the other day. It's like the only people that the only people that get upset with you for setting up boundaries are the ones who like got something out of you not having any. That's why he's so aggressive with her. It's like, how dare you like now start speaking up? Like, I just want to make a comment. And he kept taking his actress's side. Every little comment, every little beat, he was like, oh, you get meek around her. I wanted to punch him when he said that, when he was like, oh, you get meek around Taylor.
No, he's really, but I would like to talk about, because we kind of talked about his tactics. I would like to talk about the fact that Marie uses tactics to torture him as well. Unfortunately, I did not write them down, which I wish I had, so I'm going to do the best I can to remember all of them. But the main one that kept getting to me, that kept bothering me, was that she kept using any form of like sex or intimacy as a way for him to lower his guard, and then she'd bring it up again and try to like. And I know, like I agree with you that like Marie like is dealing with more. I think Malcolm is more incorrect, but there were different tactics like that she was doing throughout, where she's trying to like, where she it's oftentimes when, because you see it first when he's like kissing her feet and stuff like that, and she's listing out all the things that annoy her about the industry and about what he did and making fun of him, but he's like laughing along. She does that multiple times whenever they're getting intimate. When he's trying to go down on her, she does it again. When his guard is lowered or when he's like distracted by her beauty, that's when she tends to like be aware that this is her time to just let out what she wants to let out.
That's so funny you say that, because I do disagree. I do agree in the sense of like she does use those opportunities to like vent, and she does use all those opportunities to like comment on his career. And it's funny because it's like it for me it felt like they definitely have these conversations where they both talk about the industry and they like make fun of it, because that's what he's doing in his monologue when he's like talking about like the white lady, like, oh, the white lady from the New York Times, like blah blah, you know. But I don't. It's funny that you say she uses those tactics, because throughout the whole film, I felt like for me, he kept pursuing her or trying to end conversations with like sex. And so she was just like, you know what, screw it. Like, you won't leave me alone. She kept saying no. She was like, no, I don't want to have sex with you. I don't want to be with you. I don't want to do these things. He literally, when she's making macaroni and cheese, like, is biting her butt, like, and like goes down on her. And she's just kind of like she didn't want that, and like he kept using her kind of like, well, at least you're like this pretty ornament. And so it kind of made sense to me why like during those times she would at least try to find like intimacy or like some kind of common ground. But I never found it that she was the one doing any of those tactics. I felt like he was pursuing her. Like when she's lying on the bed, he jumps on her. When she's making macaroni and cheese, he goes down on her. When they're standing there and talking and stuff, he's kissing her neck. When she's wearing her like tank top and underwear and she's just kind of like sitting and smoking a cigarette, he pursues her. So that's the only time that I saw her like getting on him was like the couch scene, which I thought was very like new wave and cool. But yeah.
No, fair enough. I guess tactic might be and I don't mean the mac and cheese scene, because she didn't do any of that during the mac and cheese scene. I think it was mainly the couch scene. I think it would be like I would go back and watch the dialogue again. It's just the way that she's saying things. She's not just talking about the industry. She's mainly talking about what he did. And it's not positive things. She's just saying them in a joking form. So he's laughing along because he's distracted.
See, I loved the couch scene. I thought that was so much fun. I was like, oh yeah, but you get a Lego movie. And he was like, oh, I don't want a Lego movie. But he does want the Lego movie.
No, I liked it too, but everything she said was a little bit of like in a mocking way. That's the way I read it, because I feel like that's just the way that their relationship is. I don't think either of them view each other in like this perfect light sort of thing. But you are completely correct in that he's also using the tactic of trying to use sex to change the subject.
Yeah.
She also uses it as an opportunity to talk about how she feels.
Yeah. You can tell that they're a couple that like specifically uses physical intimacy more than like mental or emotional intimacy
Mm.
because like they're really volatile towards each other, but like sex is their glue,
Yeah.
you know?
And speaking of which, I thought it was really interesting, like just the commentary on her mentality and like where she's at. And it was a really good way to break up the act too when they're on the floor on the rug and then she has to go to the bathroom and he's just like that whole like staying with him and he's like, please, please come back the same way. And she just comes back and I was just like, ooh. They both knew it was gonna happen, but like there's something that he could do to stop it or like vice versa. And it's just a really interesting thing because it's like it's one of those things where it's I don't think it's completely like when you're with someone, you talk to them, you have an argument, then later you have a chance to think on your own. Obviously, you different things come to mind, and then it's a question of whether or not to bring it up. But I think it's that in combination with whatever she's dealing with that's like kind of forces her suddenly to think about it again, and then she comes back bringing it up.
Because think about it, they never reach a conclusion. They reach a distraction. And that's why he gets excited. He's like, yeah, yeah, let's just drop it, let's have sex. But when she's alone, she has a moment to reflect and she's like, oh no, he's never apologized. He's never this like, I still didn't get the closure I need. And that is so prevalent in toxic relationships because that's why things build up. That's why like those types of couples will like throw things at each other. Like, remember what happened 5 months ago? Because you never reached a conclusion. You just moved on, moved on, moved on, moved on. You know?
Yeah, and I think they chose good times to stay with different, like either Malcolm or Marie for when they were
Yeah.
separated, like what to show the changes because it's like he just stayed in like that high, and then she comes back, and you can just sense as soon as she comes back that like that tone is gone. I think it's also difficult though with those things where it's like this is one of those things, for example, where I don't like the closure is not going to be met. He can even apologize and mean it. The closure is not going to be met. And like, so that's why when couples throw back like something that happened 5 months ago, most more likely than not, even if at the time it was discussed further once they had both like thought on their own and come back with further points, you're just go it's like the idea of, debates don't work. Debates don't really work for the most part because everyone's going to just further get entrenched in their own opinion in the first place.
Well, also debates only really work if there's like debates only work if both sides aren't being cruel to the other. The debate can't be like your own character and your own merit. It can be like, hey, just so you know, like today at dinner you made a blunder. It's like, oh, well, how did I make this blunder? Blah blah blah. And then we have a conversation, we come to a conclusion of like, you know what, you're right. Or like, you know what, you're right. Maybe I was a little too sensitive, maybe I was a little too angry. You know what I mean? That situation with them, for me, it felt like Marie is at the point in her life where she is strong enough to leave him. She isn't the same person she was before. She's ballsy enough to make these claims that, like, I would be a great actress, and now it's bothering her. And she needs to leave him in order to get better, or else she's going to constantly be stuck in the same person, in the same mentality of what she was at 20, because that's what he met her as. So that's how he's constantly going to be treating her. Because, like, I don't know about you, but like every person I've ever met who's in a toxic abusive relationship, when it ends, becomes a better version of themselves. 9 out of 10. Because the abuser, although they're both being abusive, and I'll make a comment about this in a second, the abuser is putting you in the narrative of what they already think of you. And then Malcolm is in a place in his life where I think he needs to be single. Like, he needs to start, like Marie says at best, what are you going to write, Malcolm? What are you going to do next? Everything, you said it earlier, everything he's ever written has been based off of these like toxic women. These women who are going through their own battles, their own shit. What is Malcolm been going through?
I'd like to hear more about the abuser.
Yes, there's a part. So we talked about how Malcolm does the thing where he's like, in the bathroom scene, like all these reasons why you suck, but this is why I love you. She does it back. In that scene where it's like, what are you going to write, Malcolm? There's nothing special about you, is basically what she's saying. There's nothing special about you. You have no like creative thoughts, like you are nothing. Which, like, we saw him at the beginning of this film. That's his whole life. That is his livelihood. That is his experience on this planet. And that's what bothers him throughout the rest of the film, is like the movie could have been better. This could have been better. You were like, you know what I mean? Like she starts nitpicking everything. And that's the only reason why I said, did it have to be tonight? Did it have to be tonight? Because that's wrong too. This person has like a goal. This person has a dream. This person has something they want to establish, and they're doing it. you know? So why do you have to come at them for everything that like that's their identity, you know? And then she says to him, but I love you. But I don't think that's what a healthy partner should do. A healthy partner doesn't remind you why you're bad. A healthy partner just gives you advice.
And that's why I think her joking comments about stuff like the Lego movie and those sorts of
Yeah.
things, those are her thoughts of her keeping him humble. But
Yeah.
she's not sitting there being like, oh, it would be so amazing. And she like making fun of the concept of him and what he'll become.
Yeah.
I don't, yeah.
But to go with you, to go with you. So I think what I would like to say in that regard is I don't think either one of them use sex as a tactic. I think both of them use insecurities to like tear each other apart. And then they're like, but I love
Yeah.
you. You
Yeah,
know?
no, agreed. And that's why I said I changed my answer when you pointed out because I didn't mean for it to sound that way. It's not that she's purposely trying to have sex. It's that when those opportunity or when those circumstances arise, she's using it as an opportunity to talk because he's distracted.
Yes.
So that's what I
yes.
meant. Like, so it's still like attack, but she's not purposely getting to that point. Once she's there, she does what she does. But yeah, but then it's just one of those things where there's so many things that they do that they're mirroring each other in their different tactics as well. That's exactly what that is. And she does really take the time to point out the different things of like why the movie could have been better if she was in it and stuff like that. But when she asks like why didn't you cast me, I also just like felt her pain. I was like, I I get why she wasn't cast, but I was also like that. Of course, she's gonna want to ask that. And again, yeah, not tonight. It should have been tonight. But keep in mind, up until now, everything was probably like piling up
Yeah.
inside of her. And then what tipped it off wasn't just that he didn't do it, but all the people at that show, like the after party, that were like, "Oh, don't feel bad." And then it's almost like, well, then you would feel stupid not to say something afterwards because it's like every single person is saying, "Don't feel bad." And what am I going to do? Just take it and be like, well, I was fine until you pointed out and you. So everyone is noticing that there's something wrong here and I'm just taking it.
And that's like also why she's at the point where there's not going to be a conclusion to this. She has to break up with him. She has to get out of that relationship. Everyone is looking at her with the word pity. Everyone is trying to make her feel better about her situation because it is pitiful. But I agreed with him, but in this pitiful in the sense of like, how can you be with a man who wouldn't even thank you at his award show about the movie that's about you? How could you be with this man? There's nothing like that. That's the smallest thing. It's not. It's the lowest blow. But I did take his side when she had that gorgeous scene, right? She had that gorgeous scene where she did the monologue, and it's obviously Zendaya, so it's gonna be incredible. But he had a good point where he said to her, "Why didn't you do that at the audition? Why didn't you audition? You know what I mean? You saw me making this movie for the entirety of the time we were together. You saw me in the casting process. You are an actress. You got to understand his perspective. He's seen her at her highest high and her lowest low. He's seen her stop acting. He's seen her give up on acting. So he's not gonna like take his baby of a project and offer it to his girlfriend who like doesn't have a big name in the industry. He made it clear he was like, you always playing extras or like the like druggie in the alley or whatever. She doesn't have a big name in the industry. It's nepotism. It's his baby. You know what I mean? And give it to a person that A isn't willing to say like, hey, I want to audition. You know what I mean? Because like what? He casts her and then halfway through, it's difficult to work with her.
So there was one specific quote she said. I've been like lately writing quotes down more often from the movies we've been watching. I don't know if you've been noticing that, but this one just really stuck with me. She said, she looked at me and she said, I can't tell my story anymore. And that made me so sad and that really hurt me. And I want to talk about it for a few reasons. One, that's very, very, I feel like relatable to a lot of us who work in the arts or anything really when our story with any shape or form is told by someone else, then you feel like you can't tell it. And I want to address that because I think it hurts. I think it's one of those things where you always have to be careful when you are telling someone's story. And I think I also just want to say to anyone who ever feels like your story's been told already and you can't tell it anymore, that is absolutely bullshit. Because you are always going to be able to say it better than anyone else could have, or differently. There are ways that you can still tell your story and let it still be your story, even if someone else, you know what I mean, for whatever reason.
So I was talking to a screenwriter when I was in high school, and it was really nice because it was like set up like, here's some career advice. And he asked me like, is there anything that you're thinking about, like you're working on? And I immediately didn't want to tell him. And he was like, I understand why you don't want to tell me. Let me give you two pieces of advice. One, people are going to steal your things. People are going to steal your things. People are going to steal the way you walk, the way you smile, the way you talk. Little interactions you have at Starbucks. People are going to steal that. Here's the difference. There are 1,000,001 versions of Romeo and Juliet. They're all different, but they're all Romeo and Juliet. So even if someone does steal your idea, no one can write it like you. No one can do it like you. No one can make it like you. So never feel discouraged because people steal your stuff to do it because they've never done it like you were saying. Two, if you really feel like someone's going to steal something, roll up with an NDA. That's what he was like immediately, like, if this is something you really care about, like, you're going to make this happen. If you were like, no, like 10 years down the line, I'm going to make this film, like I've been working on this film, blah, 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 blah. And you're having a meeting with someone, don't feel uncomfortable about it. Literally roll up, contract on the table, sign this, or else I'm not going to talk to you about it. And he was like, that's an extreme thing. But how many times have we heard where of like, oh, I don't want to be weird. I don't want to be awkward. It's like, well, when you get to that lawyer's office, you're going to wish you were awkward and weird, aren't you? So it's like, if you want to tell your story, never feel afraid to do it. And also just be courageous in the fact that like no one has your voice.
My last thing is going to be, I did, after I watched it, look up a little bit of the reviews.
This is what I was so waiting to know. Okay.
Yeah, and I invite you to look it up after this.
I shall.
Yeah,
I didn't do
anyone
this.
who's there, because it's one of those things where like really it's gonna get political, guys. It's gonna get political fast. The writer and director is white.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Exactly. Neither did I until I read the reviews. And there's quite a bit of parts of dialogue where it talks about being Black in the industry or being white in the industry, or be like about the way that being a woman or being a man is used against you, because there's this whole part where he talks about how like because he's a man, suddenly it's used against him that he doesn't have those experiences, so then he can't talk about it, like talk about being a woman or write as a woman because he's a man. And it kind of like basically critics did not receive any of that well.
But it's because it's specifically attacking critics. That whole monologue is attacking how we as a society perceive every single thing in the industry to be a political statement. And it's like the critics who take it and run with it. And so I can imagine why the critics were like, well, go F yourself.
Right. And I'm not saying I agree with it or disagree, but I think it's also because it's a white man kind of using it the way they read it as. It's a white man using his political agenda and furthering it through a Black man's voice.
Oh my gosh.
So that's why it's the issue of like, it gets political real fast.
Oh my gosh. Okay, to be honest, I did not know Sam Levinson was white. I just didn't look it up. I just didn't see that. I do think when you put it like that, that's so interesting. Well, we can even flip the script and so the monologue in question is this beat in the film in which he goes on a rampage talking about how like the director of Moonlight is not gay. So like, did he have a right to make Moonlight? You know what I mean? Did he have the right to make a Black man story of being LGBT in Miami when he is none of those things? You know what I mean? Oh, well, he's from Florida and he's a Black man, but that's it. You know what I mean? So that's a thing to put into question. Or like, Blue is the Warmest Color. Blue is the Warmest Color is made by a French straight man. You know, how can they make a story about two lesbian women? And that also, if you look into like how that film was made, it's like really uncomfortable to everyone that made it. Or for example, Call Me by Your Name, two straight actors. So it's like when you dissect it down to the final minutia, like obviously that is going to be an issue for art in general, because my biggest issue with the statement of like, do they have the right to tell the story is because people always say it should be a Black man who says this, it should be an LGBT person, it should be a Latina who says this, it should be a white woman who says this. But if they weren't the ones who came up with the idea to make it, then that story will never exist. That's the issue. When people are like, do you have the right to tell this story? It's like, well, in a way, I'm the one that came up with this story. I'm the one who wanted, like, technically speaking, BlacKkKlansman is written by two white guys. And then when Spike Lee was pitched the film, he was like, let's be honest, did two white guys make this? And they said yes. And he was like, I want to put my own spin on it. And then he won the Oscar for the screenplay. But the people who pitched it, bought the rights, and made it with the guy who it's written about were two white men. So that takes into question too. You know what I mean? But if they didn't have the idea to make it a film, would that exist? Now, what you're saying makes a lot of sense because he's using a figure as a token conversation point. Because the whole conversation is like, well, as a black man, why does everything I have to make be political for it being black? Like the fact that he cast a black woman in the story of like a drug abusive, well, we don't really know what the movie's about. We just know that it's about a woman experiencing drug abuse. Is it a political statement that she's black? Like, why can't she just be like a drug addict? You know what I mean? So it's interesting the way that you phrased it just there, where it's like, I feel like a lot of white men have been crying out about that over the last 10 years of us like going progressively towards like people being authentic in their stories, like Portrait of a Lady on Fire, two lesbian women in France, directed and written by a lesbian woman in France. But she came up with that story. So it's this really odd gray area that I do see where the critics are coming from of like, yes, I see you, I get you. You kind of made a mascot of your actor to feed your own agenda of like, well, can we just move on from this?
Right. And that's why I said it's gonna get political real fast because personally, I I read a few of the articles. I quite frankly do not feel like I am educated enough in this area to speak as to whose side I'm on with it because I kind of I understand the form of like wanting to make art and I understand the form of like, well, maybe you shouldn't be making that art. So I'm like, I want to even revisit those articles, honestly. I I liked the movie. I loved, and that's why I'm speaking so carefully about it because I'm like, I liked
It's
the
a gray
movie.
area.
Yeah, and I love Zendaya. Like I love both the actors' performances, and I liked like the script went for the aspects of them fighting and the way they tore each other down and stuff like that. But the whole concept of how art should be made, who has the right to make what art in what way, is such a great area that I don't even feel comfortable yet to like address that aspect. Like I don't know, and I don't think there's just a black and white answer, and that's why it's so difficult.
Funny that I didn't know Sam Levinson was white.
Yeah.
But Zendaya, aren't they both producers in this movie?
I have no clue about that. From what I saw in an article, I think there's parts of this that are improvised by the two actors as well, which is really cool, as far as I know of.
Yeah,
And
there's
this
this
was all made during the pandemic, which was really, really impressive to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm sure they were credited in some way that they were able to work on this and everything. But yeah, what would you? I don't even think I'd do anything differently.
I wouldn't do anything different.
So I'm just gonna say, what would you rate it?
Um, Probably an 8.5.
I was thinking 8. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I loved getting to see. I'm a huge fan of Zendaya's, so I love getting to see her in something again. They're both amazing. Really really talented. I loved it. Yeah. What are we watching next week, Sam?
Rogers and Hammerstein Cinderella, aka the Brandy Cinderella, the best of the Cinderellas, in my opinion.
Please comment below what you guys thought. If there was any parts that you wanted to talk about, like that, your favorite monologues or anything like that. And please comment below if you have any movies that you want us to see moving forward, especially for Pride Month, which is coming up soon in just a few months. So,
Or for next year's Black History Month.
thank you guys so much for watching.
I am Sam,
I'm Belize.
and this has been Heartbreaker Films.
See you next week.